Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Multifamily Talks. I'm Krista Hurley, Industry Principal at RealPage, and your host for today's session. Multifamily Talks Live is a monthly video series on LinkedIn where we discuss all things multifamily through candid conversations. If you can't join us live, you can watch or listen to any replays on LinkedIn or on your favorite podcast platform. And be sure to follow us so you don't miss episodes, and remember to drop any comments any questions in the comments section. Now, I've spent the last 14 years here at RealPage, and throughout that time, what stood out most to me is the deep commitment our people have to the multifamily industry and to the owners and operators that we serve. Trust at RealPage is not absent, but as we navigated significant change, we are working every day to continue to build trust with our customers and employees. And we're supported by some of the most loyal customers in multifamily, customers who continue to trust the people and the innovation behind our platforms. Today's conversation is about meeting everyone where they are, those who've been with us for years, those who have questions now about RealPage, and those that are newer to the industry. And that's why I'm really glad to welcome Dirk Wakeham, CEO of RealPage. Now, Dirk, for some, your name is well known and others not so much. Can you share a little bit about yourself and why you chose to join RealPage again?
Well, I've always had a passion and love for this company. I was actually a customer back in the rent roll days when I was working on the property owner side and implemented the rent roll system and enjoyed the products we had and enjoyed working with the team, and eventually built a company and then sold it to RealPage and had a chance to come here as an executive. I was all set to retire, and I always told my friends, I said, there's only a few jobs in this industry I'd like, and the RealPage job would be one of them. And so the investors called me and asked me if I'd come back, and I was pleased to come back. So this is one of the great jobs in this industry, and I'm pleased to be here and work with the team every day.
Well, we are so happy to have you. Thank you for joining. Now, at this point in your journey as CEO, what have you personally learned about what builds or erodes trust with your people, especially when it comes to decisions about that are really hard or the visibility isn't perfect?
So I've shared this internally. There's a quote from the founder of Under Armour, and he said, "Trust is built in drops and lost in buckets." And I think that's very appropriate. And I believe that in order to build trust, we've got to build it drip by drip or drop by drop. And the first thing is we have to provide software that works as it's promised. If we sell a piece of software or sell a solution to a customer and it doesn't work, that's going to erode trust in a massive bucket. So that's number one. Number two, I think, is saying one thing publicly and saying another thing privately. If we're saying one thing to our customers or to our partners or to our investors and then saying something differently to ourselves privately, that's going to erode trust. And then lastly, things around pricing or contract surprises. I think nothing destroys trust faster than making a promise about a product or making a commitment about a contractual term and then later finding that not to be true. So this pricing and contract clarity, I think, is another thing that needs to be materially executed well in order to establish and maintain trust.
I love those three. So how do you actually turn RealPage's culture into the consistent everyday actions, those accountability, ownership, like you mentioned, and even follow through so customers generally feel it in their actions with our teams?
It's funny, I was walking over here on the way to the studio from my office, and I noticed that we've got the values printed on the wall, and they're obviously very important values. But I think where those values become behaviors, and probably more importantly, where we execute on those behaviors at those critical customer pain moments, is where those values become reality and become hardwired into the way in which we operate. So I think both with our leadership and with our folks working with the customers every day, this accountability has to be symmetrical, and our leaders and our associates need to live by the values, but they have to live through that by their actions, not just by having them printed on the wall and being able to recite them back when asked about them.
Yeah, top down, side to side, all around.
Amen.
So PropTech isn't optional anymore. It's core to how all of our partners are utilizing our technology and run their businesses. So when it breaks or feels unclear, that's when trust really starts to disappear fast. So as a CEO, how do you define trust and what it should actually look like and how RealPage operates day to day?
One of the things that I share with our people is that what the service and the products that we provide are really mission critical to our customers. And that means that they've got to work all the time. Any time the software doesn't work, it's a big problem for our customers. So that mission criticality is pretty important. And I think the trust is that quiet confidence under the covers that the system is working that we need to hold closest. And that really comes down to having no surprises in the software, in the people, or in our economics.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into my next question about, the accountability and how to scale that. So RealPage is so embedded in their day-to-day, as I mentioned, those operators really need to rely on it, and any type of break in that can really destroy that scalability. So how does that level of responsibility shape how you think about accountability with our customers?
Look, we have the benefit of being embedded into their operations, but what that really means is that our uptime is their uptime. And so we've got to make sure that the applications are working, because when we're down, they're down. And every release that we issue, and that has an impact, positive or negative, it's going to carry a lot of weight, and we need to understand the weight that carries. If we ship it and it doesn't work, that's going to have an impact on our customers.
Yeah, and release notes have been a very big topic lately. So I'm glad that you brought that one out.
Feedback from customers. So yes, absolutely.
Okay, we're on the same page there. So over the past few years, there's been a lot of uncertainty, scrutiny, mixed messages, right? Well, while everything still had to keep running. Now, from your perspective, what does real transparency from tech providers look like during and after those times that happen?
Well, first of all, transparency isn't about what we say in the middle of a storm or when the customer's having a problem. It's about what we say during the sales process, what we do when we're under pressure from a regulator or have a deposition, and it's what we tell our teams during town hall. All those things need to line up. What we promise to the customer, what we say publicly when we're having to say something under oath, and what we tell our teams during those town halls.
I think you're perfectly teeing me up for the next question every time, because in my conversations with clients, they care less about what has been said and more about whether their tech partner steps up early and fixes what may not be working. So how does RealPage approach accountability when things break down, and what does real ownership look like in those moments to you?
Well, I think in my first town hall here, I used the phrase ownership over escalation. And one of the things I hope to inflect in the culture is encouraging people to own problems as opposed to escalating them up the food chain. We have to absorb the friction, and we can't pass that back along to the customer. So when the customer raises a concern or a problem or a support ticket, what I'm hoping to do is encourage the team to really take ownership of that rather than just escalate it up in the organization, escalate it to engineering, et cetera. So I think the ultimate test of whether we did our job there is asking ourselves, did the customer's life get easier in the moment in which they raised that concern, or did it not?
Yeah, that's a great one. There's so much excitement around what we have been delivering and what's to come. They really love to see the vision and roadmap. So that's kind of where, excuse me, I'm leading to the next question on, everything that we've done thus far and now where we're headed in terms of reliability, predictability, to really sustain that confidence over time, again, rebuilding that trust. So how do you balance innovation with reliable day-to-day execution?
Look, innovation without reliability is just a sales pitch. We have to be able to not only deliver the products that the customer is buying reliably, that has to be non-negotiable. Innovation is ambition, and we are doing a lot of that here at the company. But the reliability is what's going to earn the trust to get the customer's attention and earn the right to sell them our innovation.
Yeah, and it's so critical, especially as the industry principal for the Agentic AI workforce we've recently launched. It is definitely crucial. And that leads into my next one, which is AI as a topic. It becomes more and more embedded in those critical systems that they use day to day. How does RealPage ensure that we're building trust inside instead of adding any risk?
So I think there's a couple things. One, we've been very careful to architect our solutions in a way that the AI responds with an "I don't know" rather than making a guess at the answer. And I think, so many times in using these tools, the AI will just respond with an answer because it's wanting to please you in some way. And I think we've taken the approach here that we want to deploy AI that really augments the human interaction with the customer, not to replace it. I've seen many talk about autonomous properties and an era where there's no human beings involved in the industry. I believe that's flawed. We're in a hospitality-like industry. And so we should be thinking about AI as a way to augment and create a better customer experience, not in a way that replaces that human judgment or replaces the human interaction. And so every model we built has a human that's accountable for it. And we're really training the models in a way to say, I don't know when it doesn't.
You're really singing my song here. That is one of the things that I love to talk about when it comes to our customers is that we are not here to replace any humans. We are a people business first, and we just want to get them the tools that make sense for them to utilize daily. So margins are tighter. We hear that a lot, and expectations are even higher than pre-COVID norms. And we keep talking about this new operating era or reality for multifamily. So how does that change what RealPage tech stack needs to deliver?
Well, first of all, the platform has to do more with less people, full stop. What the promise of what we're delivering, the promise of agentic technology is allowing everyone to do more with less. And that's how we're going to deliver the ROI to our customers. And I think that integration matters really more than features. I think it's important to get that integration right. I was talking to a customer the other day, and they said their on-site teams have to log into like 18 different applications. And so the promise of our platform is the ability to minimize the number of vendors and allow them to do more with less. I think the other thing we need to be very cognizant of is that our products, each one of them, must be able to deliver measurable impact and measurable NOI. And I think, all these tools are great, but if we can't demonstrate how we're able to deliver the return through the sales process, but then definable results, none of this stuff is worth the money that we're investing to build it or the money the customer's paying us to implement it.
Yeah, and on that topic of doing more with less, there's still an understandable concern across the industry about whether AI supports on-site and centralized teams or maybe complicates more of their day-to-day roles. How is RealPage designated AI to work alongside those human teams rather than disrupt or replace them?
It's funny, we had our all hands on Monday and I told a story. I'm an amateur pilot, not an amateur pilot. I am a pilot. I have an airplane and I fly the airplane. And I was talking about the automation that my airplane has. It has a glass cockpit and it has an autopilot. It has a GPS and it has a way for me to say, I want to go to Greenville, South Carolina, for example. Nice. And it'll draw a straight line and tell me how to get to Greenville, South Carolina. And the automation's great. But what the automation allows me to do as the pilot is it elevates my ability to make the right decisions. Should I actually take the flight? How do I brief the passengers appropriately? How am I looking at the weather and the factors in the areas that the system doesn't do? The system relieves me of those kind of mundane responsibilities and allows me to focus on the more important things, which is flying the airplane and making the important decisions. And I think, AI is a perfect analogy for this. Thinking about the AI is not going to replace the human in the loop. It's going to allow our humans to make better and more informed decisions. And I think the example I give, I've told this story as well to many people that work here, is if you don't understand what goes on in a leasing office on a Saturday, you don't really understand this business. And I think if you've sat in a leasing office on a Saturday that happens to be the first day of the month, you have an appreciation for the work that goes on. And there's many of those things that go on that can be done better with automation. It's going to relieve those teams of that responsibility and give them the opportunity to focus more on delivering a better customer experience.
For sure. So speaking of on-site teams and getting into the weeds about maybe the residents, flipping the script on that, RealPage impacts the experience of millions of residents through the partners it serves. So how do you think about resident sentiment and what does it take to build broader trust and partnerships in that market?
So this morning, I actually got an email from a resident. They were able to reach out to me on LinkedIn. They had a concern about one of the products they bought from us.
Wow.
And I was really surprised because most residents don't know RealPage by name. They buy products that are sort of sponsored by or endorsed by our customers, and that's okay. Our job is really to ride alongside the property owner and make their job easier and make sure that their residents are having an unbelievable resident experience. And that's another way we can build trust, by making sure that we take care of our customers. And we do that one interaction at a time. It's not through a campaign. It's not through a fancy slogan. It's by doing the right thing for the customer every time. And in this case, we were able to escalate that. And within an hour, we were able to get that residence issue resolved, even though they were able to reach out to me through LinkedIn.
That's beautiful. Wow. That's awesome. So in a crowded market, in the prop tech space, what really separates a long-term partner from a short-term solution? And how does that open platform factor into this?
Look, I think partners that are thinking for the short term, they sell features. I think those of us that are in this for the long run and have been in it for the long run, we sell outcomes and we deliver those outcomes. And I think that's shown in the way in which we show up and deliver an outcome in year one, and the same way we show up and deliver that outcome in year 5. So I think that's one of the ways our platform provides that visibility.
Well, speaking of 5, looking 5 years ahead, what does trust mean to a measure for RealPage in 5 years of success? Like, how do you hope the market describes its role in 5 years?
Look, I think trust is the only metric that can compound year after year. And I hope customers in 5 years describe us as the operating system for multifamily, the system they trust, the system that they rely upon to run their business, the system that they rely upon to deliver better resident outcomes, and the vendor that they stop worrying about because we earned their trust.
Awesome. Well, Dirk, this year's Real World, I'm going to fast forward into the August timeframe because I'm so excited about it, but it feels like a milestone for you. It's your first one back as CEO, and we're gathering in August in Denver, which is a different venue for us than most, at the Gaylord Rockies Resort and Convention Center. So when you think about that moment, right, that you talked about standing on stage as a keynote and you're standing with customers and our teams, maybe in the expo, what do you want RealPage to deliver for attendees this year?
Well, first of all, I'm very excited to be at the Gaylord. I think it's a great property. It's a great venue for us to showcase our innovation for our customers. What I will say is I'm incredibly nervous about carrying the weight of the keynote. In my prior life here, I had the opportunity to participate in several of them as a contributor, but I think the weight of having to carry the entire keynote presentation or a good portion of it in a way that is allowing us to deliver the message of our innovation to our customers. I think that's super important. But I think this opportunity to demonstrate and explain our vision for the future, our vision for the new operating system for multifamily, and how we believe sort of this evolution of agentic AI technology and how we're going to be able to deliver more efficiency and better resident outcomes. I'm super excited about that.
Well, I can't wait for it. I'm super excited as well. Now, we've covered a lot today, from how trust is earned internally to how culture and execution show up for customers every day. It's a powerful reminder that leadership at this scale is ultimately about responsibility, consistency, and of course, trust. And Dirk, thank you so much for joining us. Since you've been back, I've can we get Dirk on Multifamily Talks? Please, team, let's make it happen. So thank you again. You've honored us for being here. We're excited to continue this series and offer up valuable conversations and topics that you can expect monthly. Make sure to follow us on LinkedIn for updates on upcoming live conversations, and visit realpage.com/podcasts for more content. We hope everyone enjoyed today's deep dive into trust and how to stay ahead in the multifamily industry. Thank you to the audience for joining us today, and we'll see you next month.